we're talking about the history of Krakow Airport today. Actually, it's two airports.
One of our favourite subjects, really, isn't it?
Oh, we love transport. Two airports. We'll get to that in just a second. First, before we dive into the details of the history here, guys, we've all been to a few airports around the world here and there. Generally speaking, how would you grade the Krakow Airport compared to other places that you've seen around the world?
Well, like the gold standard, of course, for me is Dublin Airport. So it scores a 1, and I'm being generous there next to Dublin Airport. Dublin Airport is warm, welcoming, has lots of great bars and places to sit and shopping. And
Are you a little bit biased here, maybe? Just a little? Or no?
No, I'm not. Look at our fabulous Terminal 2.
Completely objectively, best airport ever, Dublin.
Well, the best one I've been in. I haven't been in that many. I've been in most of the major London ones. Didn't see anything particularly special there, although they're...
Again, totally objective, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to say? Malaga Airport's pretty nice.
Dr. Mike?
I've been to my fair share of airports, but I'll be honest, I can't really recommend any of them.
Oh! Sorry to interrupt you, Mike. Bangkok International is pretty special. They give you a necklace when you walk through the gate. Everyone's smiling. Yeah, okay.
Isn't
Right.
that Johannesburg?
I was about to say, yeah, the necklace.
I have to say, Bangkok made a big impression on me, the airport. In fact, it might be the best
What
part.
did the necklace look like?
It's like one of these smiling Thai girls walked up to me with a flower necklace and put it over my neck and said, "Welcome to Thailand." And
Nice.
I was like,
You're branded as a tourist now when you walk out the airport
they
doors.
call it the land of smiles. And you know what? The people are very happy and smiling.
Josh, Krakow Airport, how does it rate in your book?
It functions. I mean,
Ooh.
it could be better.
Backhanded compliment, sounds like.
I don't know. I mean, it keeps looking better, but somehow not in kind of actuality functioning any
Now, because
better.
of its small, reasonably small scale, is it fair to compare it with
Hold
the
on a
larger
second.
airports of the world? I mean,
Hold on
I
a
think
second,
different
John.
class. What?
What's your favourite airport?
Tampa.
Tampa.
That's obviously the best.
Walk us through. What's so special about Tampa?
Okay.
I've been to Tampa Airport, so I can corroborate or deny. Actually.
First of all, I would contrast it with a lot of airports, like in let's say everybody's least favorite, like in Frankfurt or in Munich or what's it called in Amsterdam, Schiphol. You know, the ones that are like
Schiphol's a great
a long
airport.
line, and you inevitably land at gate 1, and your connection is gate 99, and it takes 3 hours to get there. Tampa has like a star hub setup, where you land in the middle, and then you go to the middle and go out to your
fascinating.
stars. And kind of, isn't JFK like that in New York? I think it is.
I think so. Yeah,
And
It's
there was a big kind of movement to get that design off the ground, so to speak. But it never really took over as opposed to the old long strip runway model.
Let's bring it back to Krakow here.
Sorry, but is it actually your favourite airport? Because you were slagging off Amsterdam Airport. That's a pretty amazing airport in terms of transport.
Okay, I mean, it probably isn't the best in the world, but I like it because when I land there, I feel good. It's my air. Just like Dublin is probably not the best in the world, but you like it because you land there and you feel good when you're there.
I think you'd like Dublin Airport.
Yeah?
Yeah. It has good pubs and everything.
No necklaces, though.
What?
No necklaces.
No necklaces.
What's the barbecue like in Dublin Airport?
The barbecue?
The barbecue?
I don't get it.
What?
Is that a joke?
I don't know. I thought
There were no-
Americans are always fans of barbecue, aren't they? So
Oh yeah, we rate airports by their grill standards.
I have no problem with that. That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
We have several establishments.
Okay, let's bring it back to Krakow here. Let's leave barbecue and necklaces behind us. Here in Krakow, two airports to talk about, actually. One that you know about and one that you probably
he's been so
don't
building
know
up with this,
about.
isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
John, but there's really there's two airports, yeah.
Believe it or not, the first Krakow airport here opened in 1912 to host the Austro-Hungarian Air Force. Now, what did an Air Force look like in 1912?
Small.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. Well, what was the Wright brothers? Is that 1903?
1903, yeah.
Okay, so this is 9 years later. I didn't
have
even
an
know
Air
they
Force
had
already.
Air Force. Remember, World War I was the infancy of Air Forces, and that's like 4 or 5 years after this. And so I'm struggling to imagine what the Air Force looked like in 1912, but there was one apparently.
Well, the Channel had already been crossed, and it wasn't that long before. When did they cross the Atlantic Ocean? That was in like 1912 or something, wasn't it?
No, that was later. I thought that was like
that was
close
late.
to the 20s. Like,
Lindbergh? No, that was the first.
Oh, that was a
nonstop.
solo, yeah. It
That
was all
a solo, of course.
all cock and brown.
oh yeah, they crashed. They barely made it.
They crashed in Ireland, yeah.
Well, anyway, 1912. And, of course, after the First World War, the airport was transferred to the property of the new Polish government, where it remained until 1939, until some very unfortunate historical events took place. The airport was taken over by the Nazis until 1945. Now, the location of this airport might be familiar to some of you listening, because you might be able to look out your window and see the runway that's actually still there. It's a big part of the landscape in that part of the city. If you are heading, let's see, east on Mogilska or Jana Pawła, the same street turns into Jana Pawła, And just after you pass the Krakow Arena on your right, about 15 seconds after that on your left, you'll see a sign that tells you that...
the Air Museum is the
Air Museum is there.
Yes, of course.
The Air Museum is there. And just behind that is where the airport was until 1964. Again, I'll get to that in just a second. So that was the location of the airport. Actually, interesting side note. Let me go on a little sidebar here. Again, if you're on a tram going along Jana Pawła heading east to Nowa Huta, right at the same place where the airport is on your left, you'll notice on both sides of the street there are some hills, mounds, which is they kind of stand out because Krakow is flat and we don't really have a lot of hills here. But on both sides of the street there are hills. Well, actually, they're not proper hills until the late 1940s, beginning into the 50s. There was the remains of a fortress there. Just like we have at the pedestrian level of Rondo Mogilska, you can see the brick and stone remains of an old fortress.
Beautifully exposed in the new development.
That's right. It's nicely kind of integrated into the whole thing.
Looks over.
And there was a fortress right there that had to be destroyed for the construction of the street that we now call Jana Pawła that leads to Nowa Huta. And instead of like leveling the area, they just kind of destroyed the building and they put dirt over the mounds of bricks and whatnot. And that's what those hills are. So right underneath, I think you dig down probably a couple of feet and you'll find the old bricks and stones from the fort that was just, again, left there. Oh, by the way, another sidebar to the sidebar. Do you know, Mike, you might know this, what we call Aleja Jana Pawła today. Do you know what the name of that street was during communist times?
Actually, I have no idea, but I'm guessing it was something like Lenin Road.
It's a great name. It's the Avenue of the 6-Year Plan.
How long did the road take to build?
I don't know that. The Avenue of the 6-Year Plan, and it was, of course, changed to Jana Pawła much later. Anyway, back to the airport.
That's what Krakowska's going to become, I think, very shortly.
Actually, Nowa Huta has a role in the reason why the airport eventually moved to where it is today, because after the Second World War, for various political reasons that we'll get into maybe in another episode when we talk about Nowa Huta, after the war, Krakow grew to the east. Mostly in the form of Nowa Huta, but not only, of course. Nowa Huta is a planned... We really should do an episode on Nowa Huta sometime.
Especially considering it's the 70th anniversary of Nowa Huta.
All right, there we go. Let's do it.
One of the only 3 planned Soviet cities fully executed.
It was a planned city for reasons, again, that we'll get into in a separate episode.
12 tanks could be defended with.
Whereas before the war, that original airport was basically on the edge of town, even a little bit outside of town. Now, with the construction of Nowa Huta, the airport is suddenly surrounded by the city, which made it kind of functionally difficult to operate, surrounded by too loud and just for safety reasons and whatnot. And so suddenly, with the construction of Nowa Huta, it was necessary to find a new location for the airport. And so that's when the search for a new location commenced. And the nearby village of Balice was the perfect solution because, close enough to be convenient, but far away enough to offer, the space they needed and whatnot. And so that is when the early 60s, 61, 62 is when they selected the site. And in 1964, the current airport that we call Jana Pawła, John Paul II Airport today, 1964 it opened, but originally as a military-only airport, guys.
Can I do a sidebar now, since you mentioned the name? John Paul got screwed getting that name renamed after him because it was always known as Balice Airport. Everyone calls it Balice Airport. They should have waited. They should have waited until they built, say, Modlin and named after him instead. I suppose they had to be in Krakow, but there's nothing worse than renaming something and nobody uses the new name.
True. That's true, actually. Yeah.
Just wanted to say that.
No disrespect to him, but I call it Balice.
He needs a second airport.
Yeah. So in 1964, it opens as a military airport. Didn't become a commercial airport until 1968. And let's be honest, not a lot of commercial airlines going on in Poland in the 60s.
Has it still got some kind of military?
Yeah, when you land there, you can see I think it's helicopters mostly, I think now. Military helicopters. When you land, it's one of the first things.
Just tell us more.
I don't know what else I can tell you apart from, yes, it is a military airport to some degree. I mean, it's like a restricted zone part of it, I guess.
We'll probably come to that when we talk about getting around that airport in a few moments.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. But let me say a few words about the airport as we know it today. Of course, John Paul II Airport, technically, we still call it Balice. The second busiest airport in the country, Warsaw Chopin Airport, is by far the busiest. Actually, the Warsaw Airport handles about half of all passenger traffic in the whole country.
Do I've never been
Warsaw's a distant second. Krakow's a distant second. What?
I've been in Modlin Airport a few times, but I've never been in...
That's the Ryanair airport?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not going too well for that airport.
Do you know what? For a crappy functional airport, I found some of the things about it quite well. The car park was very nicely designed, and it was easy to get in and out of. For the low cost model, it was at least more efficient.
Well, sure, kind of nice. I've never been to Model, but
atrocity that they've built a mile from their main terminal, which has to be the greatest step backwards in the history of aviation. Thank you for that, Lisbon.
where in Lisbon?
Yeah, it's just a joke. They just
Lisbon.
a joke. Like they've just taken airports back 50 years with this. Anyway.
All right, calm down. Back to Krakow here. The Krakow Airport's in the news last week because they broke another record. They break a record pretty much every month for the last 2 or 3 years. But this record was a little bit special because both in May and in June, for the first time ever, the Krakow Airport, Balice, exceeded 750,000 people in each of those 2 months. So it's a new record. Never been that high. Which is up 25% from last year. 25% in 1 year.
Wow.
That's huge.
I've lived here a long time, and you get a stat like that thrown at you every year by you on a quiz. You know, it just seems to be on an ever upward
And
trend.
we've got the busy months of, I guess, the peak months of July and August still to come. So every reason to expect we might flirt with 800,000
Why not, John?
people in a month.
Why not?
Dr. Mike?
Jaw dropping here, man.
It's almost up with our listening figures, isn't it?
But I'm assuming this might have something to do with not only growing tourism, but because of Poland's growing affluence, I'm guessing that a lot of people travel.
Well, that's part
in Poland and
of
in
it.
Europe
But in fact, the main reason for the boost in May and June is a little bit more, it's very simple. Actually, Wizz Air started operations from the Krakow Airport in May. And, that gave them the boost in the numbers. But, Ryanair is still the king. Ryanair is still the king of Krakow Airport. Started in 2005. Dave, did you know that in terms of passenger traffic, that Krakow is the 5th busiest Ryanair airport in Europe?
No, I didn't know that.
Can you name 1 to 4?
Well,
Krakow's
number
5.
one I would guess is Stansted.
Number 1 is Stansted, in London, Stansted. Number 2?
Oh, Jesus.
You really like this airport.
I'm already reaching. I really like this airport.
Yes.
Dublin Airport.
Dublin Airport, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
3.
Number 3.
This one's tough.
I'm going to guess. I'm going to
Is
guess.
there a cheap one outside Frankfurt by any chance? No.
No, this one it's Milan Bergamo.
Oh, right, okay.
And 4, also tough.
Is that one outside Barcelona?
Nope, it's a Brussels Charleroi. Did I say that right, Josh? Charleroi.
No.
How do you say that?
Charleroi.
Charleroi.
It'd be handy for
So
diplomats.
London,
but they've
Dublin,
never
Milan,
deigned to fly
and Brussels, and then Krakow. So it's kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big deal. Actually, another reason behind the recent boost from the Krakow airport are Ryanair's connections to the Ukraine. You can fly to Kiev, Odessa, Lviv, and Kharkov. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And apparently those flights are full all the time. So again, contributing to the boost.
Bringing in our Uber drivers.
And of course, on top of that, other airlines have expanded their operations. Norwegian Air, LOT, there's always LOT, Jet2, Finnair, SAS, Fly Dubai, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking at 8 million passengers for this year, possibly 9 in the next 2 or 3 years. And the weird thing about this is that we are hitting the projected capacity, the design capacity for the airport as it exists now after the renovations that were completed at the end of 2016. So less than 3 years later, we're already reaching the new capacity.
That's happening in Dublin as well. We built a brand new sparkling terminal that opened at the depth of the recession and was completely empty for the first year, but now it's already at capacity.
Dr. Mike, you mentioned growing affluence of Poles as kind of the driving factors behind this. It makes sense to me. Pent-up demand.
It's easier to fly now ever before. Prices are lower and Poles are making more money. So the idea of city hopping or just going to work in Gdańsk or Warsaw, it's like flying is an option now, especially considering the prices of trains and the.
It's a great economic indicator as well. The amount of leisure flights going out really shows that people have a bit of spare money in their pockets. The average middle class person, I suppose.
Yeah, the tourism is always there.
Holidays to
tourism is always there as a driver to Krakow, obviously. But I agree with you, Mike. I think it's domestic demand. And of course, Poles abroad, don't forget about the Poles abroad working in the UK, Ireland, and elsewhere. That's a constant source of passenger traffic for the airlines. The Ukrainians here, they're all kind of individually, they might not be huge numbers, but taken together, it makes a growing
I'd like to reach
pie.
a conclusion that there are definitely different reasons people use airplanes. And we have put our finger on several there.
You guys remember when, I guess this is before they finished the last renovation in 2016. Remember when the train to the airport, the terminal was like 250 meters away and you had to walk?
Yeah.
The
Well, there was
dumbest
a bus.
design ever.
It has this stupid regulation. Are we going to get to talk now a little bit? Is this you've been spitting out facts for a good 10 minutes? There's a lot of preparation you did for this piece, John.
You may speak, Dave. I give you permission.
I was very impressed. I'm always impressed with your geographical mindset when you discuss Krakow. Did you study geography as a younger man or something?
I may have looked at a book or two.
I honestly forget where I live is in East or West Krakow. Do you always know the
You don't know
context?
directions?
I'm not like, I just know where I
my
know.
God.
I know how to get to Josh's place.
I'm going to
I know
take
how to
away
get
your
here.
man card.
I
You
know
just
a
lost
lot
your
of
man
street
card if you don't know
names.
directions.
You know, I know how to get places in the city centre, but yeah, you've taken it to another level. I have
So
to
about
say.
this
I really
train,
enjoyed that little
what's your
history
take on the train to the airport? And
right.
do you remember when it stopped 200 meters away from the terminal?
Yeah, we're doing gripes now, right?
Yeah, we can.
Just
Oh yeah, we can
before you start
complain
the
now.
gripe, just in defense of that, the train line out to the airport wasn't originally meant for the airport. It was like a business or some kind of other infrastructure was built there, and they decided like, hey, this line almost goes to the airport. Let's use it for airport connections.
Do you know what? It was just as good the old way where you hopped off around the
Almost,
corner.
yeah.
They never needed to mess with it so much. They've been trying to get this right now for about 10 years and they're still dicking around with it. It's still not right. Sometimes it runs every half hour, sometimes every hour. It's a
Well, it
really...
looks like it should be right. I mean, you've got like a double platform. There are escalators. It takes
Well, it's
you
nice
right
now.
into
It's
the...
very nice. It takes you right there.
There's just no sodding trains.
So would it kill them to put a timetable in the terminal so you can
I
see
don't want
when
to
the
do
next
that
train
because
is?
there's no trains. That's embarrassing.
Terrible.
Also, it's difficult. The first time you go to the Krakow train station, it's on like the third floor when you get across it. It's not well signposted how to get to the platforms. You can easily go wrong there.
Oh, and they change it randomly as
Yeah.
well. It's like it should be platform 3, or randomly they'll change it, and you won't know. And I've seen people running around with backpacks, and briefcases.
There's a lot of that in
suitcases.
Polish train stations in general, last minute switches and stuff. You never know what's going on. But anyway, the airport itself, we've discussed this many times. It's great that it handles so many numbers. I suppose it just about functions correctly. But doesn't it rank one of the worst in Europe for flights taken off on time?
I have seen it near the bottom of those tables. I don't remember the exact details, but I think you're right.
Waiting on my flight to take off. I suppose some of that's down to the fog, but
The fog doesn't help. There's the
volume
limited
down
runway
through it doesn't
options.
help.
Yeah, they don't have that advanced radar system as well to help them with like landing on no instruments, which a lot of airports at this level do have. Like,
Well, not in Smolensk.
It seems very strange to me as well the way the sales of food and beverages have been divided up between the local chains in Krakow, you know, your Avitex, all of these different places. The prices are as high as any airport in the world. The product is terrible. It's insulting to be asked to pay 25 zloty for a sandwich that is literally 3 zloty in the city centre, even on the main streets.
To go with your 9 zloty
You know,
Coke.
it feels like you're being robbed when you're in the Avitex in the airport. I hate that place. And what we need is a few, I've said this many times on the show, you know, Starbucks, McDonald's, give people what they
known
want.
international brands.
Yeah, you know.
I think there's also, to be fair, there's the element that there's probably a very high price to pay for the concession, so that's one reason why the
city
prices
needs to
get
get,
jacked.
you know,
I mean, it's like motorway services, isn't it? They're expensive.
Come on,
because
it's a bit suspect that there's no major international brands can find a business model that works in Krakow Airport, and it's all the local companies. It seems strange.
You know,
to me.
in that sense, I would suggest it might have something to do with the fact that this isn't a hub airport in the sense that people fly through it. It's a destination. It's so you don't have people coming to the airport and just waiting there 2 hours for a connecting
McDonald's are everywhere in Poland. They bite their hand off if they, I mean, if Avitex can do it, why can't Mackie D's do it? It annoys me. The airport, I fly to Britain and Ireland mostly, of course, and the two gates, 17 and 18, the notorious two gates that are just jammed right on top of each other. They had to have known when they built that was going to be one of their busiest corners of the airport. You're trying to get 180 people, two lines of 180 people on to flights at the same time. It's chaos. You don't know what line you're in.
Look, it needed to be at one end though, because you want it to be remote because of the non-Schengen situation.
Yes, but you could have made those gate area waiting areas larger. They are literally
that's true.
some of the
Yeah.
smallest ones at the airport.
Because it's just one regular pathway and there's toilets on either side. So there's no room to even have dividers and to have 4 different lines. It's crazy.
The first time I went to the Krakow Airport was in 1995. And Dave, you mentioned 2 gates that you're talking about. At the time, in 1995, there were 2 gates in total. And
those were the
it was
days.
great. It was literally impossible to get lost. You were either going in this queue or that queue. It was fantastic. And of course, at that time, what do you call that thing? We talked about this before. They either wheel out the ladder outside, or you have that little arm thing. That
A couple of names for it. Jetway.
Jetway. Is there another name for it?
Jet bridge, they call that.
Anyway.
Gangway.
So no such thing as a jetway at that time. All ladders, all outside, 2 gates. It was nice. and still had that feeling. It was 1995, but it was still about 1985 inside the airport. I kind of miss those days. It was kind of.
Well, I will say as well as
now airports all have that same cookie cutter feel. You could be anywhere in the world; they're all basically the same.
But this is another big gripe people have about Krakow Airport. Everybody who travels through it, the two bus situation. So. You have to get a bus to the bottom of the steps. Now, all right, I can see that in some cases the closest the plane can get is a little bit of a walk, yeah? But that's the same in Dublin Airport. You walk from the gate to your plane. It's clearly marked with white lines, and there's a pedestrian crossing where the cars go by, and at every pedestrian crossing, it's manned by a dude with a flag, yeah? That's to let the transport vehicles and the steps and everything get around without anyone being hurt. It's simple enough. People want to walk to the aircraft.
Do they let you walk when the weather is really bad?
No.
Only when the weather permits.
In Dublin, you always walk.
In the rain?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's only you're only outside for a little bit. You put your,
the 45-second bus ride is a little bit.
Because the whole
weird.
thing slows everything down so much. The first bus arrives, it goes to the thing. The second bus takes forever. Right. You have to wait till every single person gets on. So if you're on the second bus, there's always one dickhead who's having an issue with their bag, go back up at the gate and arguing with your woman and taking 10 minutes to get on the bus.
That's me. That would be me.
Everyone's loaded on the bus and waiting on this one person. So if you're on the second bus, you're nearly always screwed.
Oh, and there's also a whole situation like for years. People that buy priority boarding, you buy priority boarding to get there first.
It's nothing in Krakow Airport,
Now, you basically be the first one to wait at the bottom of steps for 20 minutes before they let you onto the bus to wait for 20 minutes. Now, at least they have a roped off section on the bus for priority people. Though, in defense, I have heard an explanation for the bus situation. Since this is still technically leased from the military, they can't allow access of non-military personnel or air staff to most of the airport. So, except for one or two spots, you can't walk across.
You have to be in a controlled environment at all times, I guess.
What a load of bollocks.
One thing. So I forgot
demilitarized zone.
I forgot to the Krakow DMZ. Yeah. I forgot to mention this earlier when we were talking about the old airport off of Janopowa. I don't know how I forgot this. The main runway, which is more than 2 kilometers long, most of it still exists in Krakow. If you look at the Google Maps version of the city or any aerial photography, you can very plainly, it starts more or less across the street from Galeria Serenata and the Park Wodny, more or less, and it goes from northwest to southeast on the other side of what's it called, Stella Savitskiego, to that what's that new neighborhood called, Avia, something like Avia, I think, and it goes right to the middle of that, and so you can walk down the same runway that the Nazis used during the war if you want to.
Taxi driver, the city like that back here,
or like a city guide even.
Great, shabby, speaks a bit of Polish. I think you can make a few quid driving anywhere, John.
I'll see what I can do. Have you never? Sorry, Dave. Have you never seen the runway?
Have
you ever been to a concert there?
I don't know really. Yeah, I don't really know.
A Credence song. Have you ever seen the runway?
All right.
There used to be a runway in the centre of Krakow, and there's little bits of it.
All right. So after the show, we're going to show Dave on the computer here with the full runway still sitting there right in the middle of the city.
It's a clear gap that I don't study aerial photography of the city on a daily basis. So I apologise.
Get to
for
work,
that, John,
man.
And I'm going to get my.
Don't use my phone to Google landing strip because you might get some other.
I'm waiting, John. I'm waiting on the first day to come back from the KrakCast before I make my analysis.
KrakCast?
Little in joke from the KrakCast.
KrakCast. Check out our news this week. Final words on the airport, guys? Airports, I should say. I'm still thinking about the 1912 Air Force myself, but
I'm guessing the reason they had the Air Force here in Poland is because they were assuming most of those planes would crash and burn, so they wanted to burn in a Polish city than in their Austrian cities.
Is that a Polish joke or is that a Nazi thing? I don't know.
And was Kosciuszko a pilot in his early days?
Okay, now we're getting silly. Okay, I think it's my cue to bring it to an end. There you go. Everything you need to know in a short history of Krakow airports. Thanks for listening, guys.
And if you're entering an orienteering competition
next time.
Krakow,
We couldn't get through one episode without an interruption from Dave at the end there. But see you next time in our next short history lesson.
Before I go, I'd just like to say I really think you covered everything there, John.
Thank you. Bye.